What is up, guys? Happy Friday. I'm getting ready to go on a listing in Truesdale Estates for $6 million, so I'm excited about that. But first, I'm going to have one of my good friends from college, Andrew Villalobos. We play college ball together, we go hiking together, we go backpacking together. So he's also a real estate agent in Riverside, and we'll talk about his business. Nayela, what's up? Jotsing Realtor, what's up? AQ Nesvi, what's up? Hello. If you guys are selling real estate, what part of the United States are you guys selling real estate in? I am here in Beverly Hills. I've been selling high-end real estate for the last 12 years? 11 years?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. But I've been in the business for the last 15 years now.
Mm-hmm.
This month is my anniversary, my license anniversary. All right, guys. So my buddy Andrew should be logging on here pretty soon from Dubai. That is awesome. Love that. You know what? My dream was to go to Dubai right when I started my license. But anyway, Andrew's coming on right now. Here we go. See if he's coming on. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, man?
How are you, man?
I'm doing well. You're looking good. Nice jacket.
Thank you. Yes, just getting ready for the appointment I was telling you about.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So, like I said earlier, I already gave everybody kind of a little introduction about you. Andrew and I played college ball together. I started in 2001. He started in 2005, I believe, right? Oh, no, 04.
04, yeah.
04, yeah. So he was a freshman and I was a senior. I feel like we were kind of close that year, but I feel like we obviously got closer after college soccer because we went on these amazing backpacking trips in the Sierras. So we'll talk about that. But Andrew is a realtor in Riverside. He specializes in historic. Actually, you know what? Tell him your story about being a realtor.
Maybe I'll start now because it's a little more interesting than the beginning.
All right,
but beginning stories are always good when you're kind of cutting your teeth and getting beat up a little bit. But so now I'm one of the main realtors here in town that specialize in historic homes. So there's a lot of kind of nuances that come along with them that it takes time to learn, and so that's been kind of my niche for at least a few years now. Anything for me, like my marketing and my focus is anything prior to like 1940, maybe 1945.
That's awesome. How did you figure out your niche? Like what drew you to just doing historic homes or like focusing your efforts in that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think my very first, just a quick aside to that, my very first kind of niche was these hilltop communities because I like to hike, I like to run, and I was like, if I'm going to be out kind of knocking on doors and dropping mailers, I want to at least have nice views and get some exercise. So I was working in these hilltop communities. They were mostly new builds, and it just didn't quite speak to me. So as I got to know the city more, because I came to Riverside to go to UCR, that's what brought me here. I didn't know anything about Riverside at the time. So as I got to know the city and I started discovering the neighborhoods that are here, there's some amazing neighborhoods.
There are, yeah.
So Riverside was the highest city per capita in terms of income in the West Coast. I think it was like 1895. So in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was so much money here, man. Henry Huntington.
That's amazing.
Theodore Roosevelt. John Muir was here. Like huge names in history were spending time here and vacationing here. And so along with all that money became really cool houses. And once I discovered the neighborhoods, I was like, that's it. The architecture, the history, the stories, that was it for me. So
I love that, man. Like as you know, I focus on expires and cold calling and stuff. And there's a lot of neighborhoods out here that are just like that. They're just really, really beautiful architecturally. And I feel like a lot of new agents always ask me, hey, like, what should I be doing? And I always say prospecting, right? So what do you do in terms of prospecting? I know that you have a different approach to prospecting, but it's worked for you. So tell us a little bit about that, like your newsletter and stuff like that.
Yeah, so for me, prospecting, I want to, there's a specific type of home that I would like to sell. So I target specifically historic districts, historic neighborhoods, years built, and those are all things that are easy to get. I can call my title guy right now and say, hey, give me a list of properties that were built between 1920 and 1925 in this area or whatever. So,
Easy, yeah.
so I do a lot of that.
Hmm.
And then I think the way that I market to those kind of lists, if you want to call them lists, is just like, I live in a historic home myself, so there's certain things that I'm interested in when it comes to restoration or history. So I try to put things out that I think people are going to be interested in, genuinely interested in. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with what I've sold
Hmm.
or what things are selling for. It's just like, I don't know, historic construction techniques or historic tile companies that
Hmm.
make tile, reproduction tile for fireplaces and bathrooms, and just things that I think would pique my own interest. And I throw that out there, and then I'm not, I'm very simple. Like I'm going to put out what is interesting to me, and then if someone else is interested in it, we're probably going to have something in common, and
Yeah.
we'll work well together.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my strategy.
I like that. I like that because I feel like a lot of people, including myself, we like to cast a big wide net and we want everybody, right? And you're like, screw that. Like, I'm not focused on like, I mean, on like an income level. You're like focused on like a client level. Like you're like you want to work with
Yeah.
clients that like the same thing you do, like the historic homes that like really appreciate that.
Yeah, I would say that's exactly right. And I think the interesting thing, or maybe even the slightly ironic thing, is that I have become known more to sell some of the higher price point historic homes, and I think it comes down to just level of detail. People
Hmm.
appreciate that, and
Hmm.
and I know myself and my wife for our own house, when we do remodeling projects or just maintenance, general maintenance, it's such a high level of focus and detail and research.
Hmm.
And so when a homeowner that I meet sees that I don't just want to get in, make some money, and move
Hmm.
on, they want to work with me. So it's
Yeah.
it's it's good. It works out all the way around.
Yeah, for sure. My mom says, Nafi Love is my mom, by the way. She says, that's
Oh,
called working
nice.
with your heart. And
Thank
then,
you very much. I appreciate that. How are you doing? Oh, I guess you can't really respond too well, huh?
well, yeah, she can only respond via typing. Then my social
Oh,
media guy
that's nice.
Alex says hi. My mom says hello, my realtor experts. Hold on.
That's awesome.
Let's see here. Somebody said something about, oh, Nayela, she's a realtor in Dubai. She says,
Oh,
is
that's
it hard
awesome.
to sell historical homes?
Um, well, I mean, I think not any harder than like what Paul's doing with luxury real estate and things, but I think that there are certainly some nuances that do not apply to newer houses. Some of those things, like one thing really big, actually recent, is insurance, getting insurance because of higher fire rates in California, earthquake retrofitting. So we didn't start retrofitting, I think, until the 1960s.
Hmm.
And so that's become more of an issue. So there's little things like that that if you don't know anything about it, you might get blindsided in a transaction.
Hmm.
But no, I mean it's I wouldn't call it hard. At the same time, I've been doing this for at least 5, 6 full years now, where I've got a lot of research under my belt. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of things I know that maybe I forget that I
Yeah,
know.
but I
Um,
mean you've only started like that's pretty recent and you've already gotten so successful. So like tell us about your newsletter. Like how'd you think about that idea and tell us your success of, passing that out and how many calls you get
oh yeah,
on that.
yeah. So success wise, I think I was pretty much getting a listing appointment every time I put one out.
Wow, that's
So I feel like
amazing.
that's pretty good,
That's
right?
a
And
listing
and
appointment. That's amazing.
yeah, and I think I was hand delivering them myself, and
Mhm.
so I'm limited with my time because
Sure.
as realtor we got a lot of things going on. So I think I was only putting out like 400 of them, 300 to 400,
Hmm.
getting an appointment per one. So that was good. And I think that the success was because I put a lot of time and effort into it. I wrote articles myself, so I would research, I would read. You can see a little bit of my library behind me.
Hmm.
I got tons of books on local history, local architecture, and then I'm like a serial book buyer, so I'll go through and I'll read them, and then I'll start putting these stories together, and I'll write articles, put that into the newsletter, and the majority of my newsletter was not real estate. It wasn't, I've sold all these houses. It wasn't, you know, it was mostly Riverside history, architectural history, maybe some information on historic furniture, you know, different things like that. And then there would always be at least one section of, yeah, by the way, I'm a realtor, and if you need to sell,
of course, a call to action.
Yeah, and so I would design them myself. I taught myself Adobe, you know, InDesign for the most part, and so I would do it all myself because I'm a pretty creative type of person. I enjoy that. That's part. I could pass that off to somebody else, but I like to do it. So I would put it together and make it look as cool as I could. I called it the fountain pen, and I'm speaking in past tense because I'm not supposed to deliver them right now because of COVID.
Yeah.
But yeah, I called it the fountain pen because I grew up in England, and all the English students write in fountain pens, which if you're not too familiar, the ones with they have the ink cartridges. It's I have it right here. So it's got the little ink cartridge.
Oh, that's cool. That's called a fountain pen. Yeah, I used to write, what is that called? Calligraphy with that?
Yeah, so calligraphy specifically is a certain type of tip at the end that gives it a style. A fountain pen is really just an ink ballpoint pen. Okay. But, you know, so I called it the fountain pen and had a lot of fun with it. And, you know, it worked. It really worked.
How much time did you spend designing it, and how much time did you spend dropping it off?
I would say probably designing it was usually at least 4 days, I would say. Maybe not 4 full days, but at least 4 days. Okay. I'd read and write and then do the images. And so, yeah, and then dropping it off was usually 3 to 4 actual total hours of walking.
That's not bad.
But the nice part of that too is like when you're hand delivering, you're getting, you know, you're walking up to the front porches, you're seeing the houses, and these are all historic neighborhoods. So I'm really getting in touch with the properties. And a lot of times I'll get a call from somebody and they'll tell me I'm thinking of selling, and they'll give me a couple of hints at where their house is, and I'm like, oh, you're on 5th Street, and they're like, yeah, how'd you know? I'm like, well, because I freaking hand deliver to your house all the time.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, so, I mean, like, you probably know more about the area than like anybody else, right? Like as a realtor. So when people want to buy in that area, they want to work with the person that knows the most, knows all the houses, knows the designs, knows all the intricacies behind selling or buying that kind of property.
I think that's for sure right. I mean, I think number one, they're always want to work with the person that's going to get them the most money.
Sure,
but
of course.
Part of doing that is really understanding what the product is and who the buyer might be and what the buyer's concerns might be. And so, yeah, I've you know, it's genuinely interesting to me. So I spend extra time. It's not like work. I'm not like, oh, I got to go and learn about craftsman architecture.
You enjoy it. You enjoy it. So so your newsletters are you take about a full week, right? Like to design and drop them off about a week, but you get about a listing appointment. But that obviously has evolved into more. You know, like not only do you get one listing appointment per time that you drop them off, but now other neighbors are seeing your sign out there, so it's just kind of growing little by little.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of the standard realtor lead revenue stream. So you got signs up, you got past client referrals. I do postcards also, which I'll take a kind of a snippet from the news because the newsletter is actually a bifold large you know thing.
Do you have one there that you can show us?
I think, I got one right here.
Let's see it.
I think I do anyways. Let's see here.
By the way, Andrew has an amazing property in Riverside. Every time I go visit him, I'm like, oh, I wish I can have a house like this in the West Side. He's got like a double lot, beautiful Spanish, single story. I mean, amazing house, man. Congrats.
It's a fun house. It's a love-hate relationship.
Oh, I'm sure it's a lot of work.
I love it.
A lot of work.
Yeah, so here's one example. So so it says fountain pen on top. This is an image from a Tudor revival that I sold. And beautiful, man, 1/2 acre, 3,500 square feet, like unbelievable.
That's awesome.
And then this is an image that I did from Mount Rubidoux, from people hiking the top of Mount Rubidoux Cross.
Yeah.
Talking about a historic landmark that was designated. Okay, so this is interesting. So this was the Brem family. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
So I met with a guy, a couple of guys actually that lived in downtown, and they had spent years researching the original family from Germany
Hmm.
that moved to Riverside, got rich doing what he was doing, and then built this house. And
Hmm.
so he had this binder like this thick with
Hmm.
images. He got in touch with the great grandson, spoke to that guy, and he
That's
just had
cool.
this huge binder of info, but he had never kind of syndicated all of it.
Hmm.
So I sat with him for a couple hours, interviewed him, and then I wrote an article about
That's
that
awesome.
family,
Yeah.
and I put it in here. Um, and then lastly, there was a book put out on a famous architect from Riverside. Actually, this is the cover of the book.
Hmm.
I was one of the sponsors of the book, so I got several of them and some art and stuff.
Nice, nice.
And so I did a quick write up on when that book was about to get published, so people
Gotcha.
would know it was coming.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of a sense of what's in
It's
those
like a
things.
it's like a really curated newsletter that doesn't talk about you. It's a cool story, and people like to hear that stuff. And
For sure.
especially people that live in these houses, they obviously appreciate the architecture, right? They're living there for a reason, right? They're paying
Right.
extra cash to like live in a nicer, historic house.
Yeah.
So okay, so
Yeah.
talk about your videos because your videos are also amazing, and
Oh,
you've been
right.
doing them for a while, and you have what's your total YouTube view count?
Uh, I think it's over 100,000,
That's amazing.
120,000, something like that.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, I think it's pretty good for listing videos. It's like
Yeah, yeah, that's
you're
really
not
good.
gonna. I don't know. I mean, I always try to keep my head like nobody's watching that stuff. But hey,
No, but
120,000 pretty good.
I mean it's a great tool to use when you go to your listing appointments, right? Like I'm gonna make a walkthrough video of your house detailing all the historical things that I know because I've researched it, I know it, and now the buyer will know it, they'll appreciate it, and they'll want to, pay more for your house,
Yeah.
right? Ultimately.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's a lot of I would say pretty frequently actually people will show up to the listing because I always am there because I know the house better than anyone. So I'm there at showings to convey to the buyer what they're seeing.
mhm.
Um, and so many times they'll show up and they'll be like, "Oh, you're Andrew. I watched the video. It's fantastic." And I've never met these people in my life.
Yeah,
So
that's
for that
awesome.
reason, I think it's good. It
Yeah,
gets people excited.
yeah.
It's basically the fountain pen put into video form. So I
Hmm.
research the home. Um, I read about the architecture. I read about the original family. I'll read about
That's
anything
awesome.
that's important about the house,
Hmm.
and then I convey that in the video. And of course, talk about beds and baths and size. But it's more about the history and
Hmm.
building that excitement.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, I started doing those kind of in the beginning, but they've evolved. I think they've gotten a lot better
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
recent years.
you should see my first video. I look like a freaking Frankenstein, dude,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this. I was
robot.
like, my arms don't move. I'm like, what's going on here?
Well, I
Um,
remember seeing your first one, and like I know how it is to get in front of the camera, so I get it. But I'm like, I know you too. I know your personality. I'm
yeah.
like, oh, this isn't Paul, man. Paul's like, you're like energy
Yeah,
and like
yeah,
pause, and then in the
yeah.
video, you're like, hey, I'm
I
Paul
know, I
Salazar.
know. It was so awkward, man. It's so awkward. And it's like I try to calm myself down, but it was just like I just couldn't do it. But like now it's obviously a lot more natural. I'm just like, whatever, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, with this time for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. All right, so
But yeah, they've
videos,
gotten views and they've sold houses,
newsletters.
man. So it's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing because I feel like a lot of agents don't even think about that kind of stuff, right? They're like on Facebook, they're calling expireds, cancels like me. They're working at, FISBOs. They have a geo farm, right? Like they have an area where they work, but it may not
Yeah,
be like a specific historical area, right? It could just be just like a regular, neighborhood of like tract homes. And not all areas are historic
yeah.
like Riverside either.
Well, I think the importance with videos too is that you convey your own personality.
Hmm.
And I mean, there have been times like I lost a listing recently where the seller told me straight out like it was just more to do with connection with the other agent. Like
Hmm.
we just didn't quite connect, and I'm like, all right, that's cool, it's understandable. But I think people they get that feeling of who you are in your video, and then you'll lose some, but the ones that you get and gain are going
Solid.
to be much tighter. And
A lot of loyalty
all
for
day
sure.
long, I'd rather have those good relationships.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I
so
agree.
yeah, I think it's important, man, for any agent, no matter what you're doing, to put those out. Because again, people will see who you are, and they'll
Yeah.
make a decision pretty quickly to work with you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's get out of work and let's talk about well, actually, no. Before we talk about our backpacking trips, there's a lot of new agents that follow me, and they always ask me, "What do you recommend I do as a new agent?" Right? So my
Mm,
answer is, well, first you got to run it like a business because most people do not run it like a business, right? It's like a fly by night and there's no schedule. Like have a schedule, run it like a business, and prospect, right?
yeah,
Like prospect, whatever that means to you. If it's creating a newsletter and dropping them off, if it's cold calling, if it's door knocking, if it's networking. There's so many ways to find people, right, and to prospect. But like my thing
right,
is, you have to prospect every single day, right? If you stop prospecting, you're not going to see business, 3 to 6 months down the road,
right,
and a lot
right.
of people, they get busy and then they stop getting busy because they didn't prospect while they were busy because they had all these deals in the pipeline, right? So what's
Mm-mm.
your advice to new agents coming in? Like what would you say, like the top three things to do?
Man, that's a tough one because it took me a while to kind of figure it out,
But you did it on your
but I
own. Like you didn't have a coach or like you just kind of like figured it out on your own. Did you have any mentors?
I had help for sure. So my background in sports, playing soccer with you and playing soccer my whole life, it was very simple to me. It was like, okay, let's find the best player that's here, and let's see what they're doing. Let's do that, and then do it better.
Smart.
So
Yeah.
as soon as I got into real estate, I was like, who are the top agents? What are they doing? And we had this area in the office called the bullpen because I didn't even have an office. I didn't even have a cubicle. I was so new, I didn't get a cubicle.
Yeah.
So I sat in the bullpen on the office computers, but the top agent in our office and still the top agent in the city was right there. His office was right there, and he always had his door open. So I would just sit there and I would just listen. I'd listen to what he was doing, the kind of phone calls, what he was up to. I would pop in, I'd ask him questions. Um, and so did that with a few people and started to figure out, okay, what are the top producers doing?
Hmm.
And then start to replicate it. And then for me, it was like, okay, well, I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to do that. That doesn't interest me. That doesn't interest me. And so kind of find my own path. Prospecting, of course, is incredibly important. But
How
you
did you
know,
prospect? Like, how did you find clients in the beginning?
the very beginning, I did tons of open houses. Anybody that would let me hold an open house for them, I would do that. And then I was door to door marketing with like flyers, postcards that I would design, and that was kind of in the very beginning.
Hmm.
And I think most of my business was from meeting people at open houses.
Gotcha. Buyers.
But um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I think at this point in my career in real estate, I think the number one thing I would tell a new agent is to find a niche within the market that is meaningful to them, that they're
Hmm.
not going to feel like it's, no matter what, at some point it's going to feel like work, but it
Hmm.
shouldn't be tedious work all the time. Because if you do that, it's just going to be so hard to be motivated, so hard to
Yeah.
be good at what you do.
Hmm.
I think that Gary Vaynerchuk talks about that a lot too. Like
Hmm.
find passion and find passion. What is it about you that you're passionate about? And I can guarantee you that there's a huge segment of the population that are going to be passionate about the same type of thing, and
For
then you've got
sure.
a connection with them, and you can do well, in this
Yeah.
business. It's a relationship business. So
Yeah, it is. It is. Awesome. All right. So thank you for all those amazing tips and your story about real estate. That's awesome, man. I love that. I love that. You're a rock star. You just started, a few years ago and you're doing well and you have a beautiful house and a beautiful family. All right. So let's talk about hiking because our relationship has gotten so much closer from our backpacking
yeah,
trips. It started
for
off
sure.
with probably a couple of hikes, and then I don't know how it evolved. I think maybe we were kind of talking about like, hey, let's go do a backpacking trip. I was like, yeah, I just bought some stuff. I
Yeah,
have the gear. So we went up. I think our first trip was with Juan, Sophie, and your dog Kiowa up
yeah,
the
yeah,
Devils whatever thing that we did last
yeah.
weekend.
It's fun.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I think what happened too is that you're awesome in the sense that you're just always down to just try things and do things.
yeah.
And so I think that was like, yeah, we did a couple of hikes and then we did that one overnight. and you
Yep.
loved it. I love it. I mean, being in nature
It's the best.
is yeah, man. For me, it's like I need it. Like I don't just like it. Like I need it. You
Yeah.
know, if I don't
Yeah.
come into the mountains at least every few months, like it just weighs on me. Like
Yeah.
being in, you know,
Yeah.
just I need it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think our best story about camping, backpacking, whatever, hiking was last year. We were up in the Sierras. Andrew's family organizes a week-long backpacking trip in the Sierras, and I've always wanted to go. He's invited me several years. I'm like, fuck, I can't go. It's like, f 5 to 6 days off of work, and you're in the Sierras, you have no reception, right? Nowadays, you have satellite phones, and hopefully with Tesla's new satellite thing, I can work from the Sierras and
No,
actually be able to
no,
go. Yeah, but I
no.
I want to be able to go. Um, but I finally went last year, and that's because I had an assistant, and she was helping me run the business while I was gone, and I loved it. I mean, the Sierras are insanely beautiful. A lot of people have never been to the Sierras, but they know Yosemite, right? Yosemite is part of the Sierras, and
Right.
Yosemite is just a small part of the beauty of the Sierras. I mean, like the Eastern Sierras is like Yosemite times a million because it's huge, and like there's not you can go hiking in
No
these
people.
areas and there's nobody there, right?
Yeah.
So last year we went up to what was it, Lake Dorothy.
Yeah. Dorothy Lake on the Convict Creek Trail.
Yeah, Convict Creek Trail, which is what,
Yeah.
like an hour away from Mammoth, or is it closer, right? Half an hour maybe?
Yeah. Well, it's like maybe not even an hour. Yeah,
Yeah.
like 35
So
minutes.
it's like a 4 or 5.
35 south.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like 4 or 5 hours from LA, and so
Hmm.
I think it's about, is it like an 11-mile hike, or no? I think it's like a 5-mile hike, but it's super steep, right? Up to Lake Dorothy or Dorothy Lake.
Yeah, I want to say like seven-ish, somewhere in that range.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's a
But it's
pretty
pretty steep.
it's a pretty steep incline, and you're carrying 40, 50, if you're me, probably 60 or 70, because you want
Yeah,
to bring
100 pounds.
your whole house with you, right? And a lot of food.
Yeah.
But so I met Andrew up there with his family, and the best story was one day, we're like, all right, let's just go hike, me and you, because we're a lot, more avid hikers than the rest of the crew that was there, because there were some, younger people there as well.
Yeah.
So, and Andrew and I like to do like crazy stuff, like we're like, oh, let's go climb this peak, right? Like off trail. So
Okay.
we looked at the map, and we're like, all right, let's just go around these two ridges and then just come back, it'd be fun. So we left, and we're going up this steep, very, very steep. What is that? Class three, you said it was?
I would say class three is when you have to use your hands to get up. So it was
Yeah.
definitely class three.
Yeah, it was a class three. Like anything steeper than that would have been like ropes. Like and it was also
Yeah,
very
for sure.
dangerous. We didn't have the proper equipment, but we're just, fun, crazy, people. So we're going up this is probably what, 13,000 feet elevation. I mean, it's high.
Yeah, I think yeah, tw about 12 on that one, but still it's high.
It's high. So we get to the peak, and we look to our left, and we just climbed up this hill, and then we see these clouds and we hear the thunder, and we're like, oh shit, like this is gonna come right towards us. And we're talking
Yeah.
about like this area is what you would call like microclimates, right? Where like these like storms form in seconds.
It's such a big mountain range that there are microclimates, and it's very common for storms to roll through, massive heavy storms,
Mhm.
lightning, hail, thunder, and then it'll roll right out 15 minutes or 20
Mhm.
minutes.
Yeah. So that's what we were hoping for, but we're at the top of the peak, and we were both looking at each other like, oh crap, right? We hearing thunder. We need to get down this mountain fast, right?
Yeah.
So we go down on the opposite side of the ridge, and they're big boulders. We're talking about, I don't
Like
know,
the size of like three trucks.
yeah, like massive boulders,
Truck,
right? So
dude.
you're like climbing over these boulders, jumping. At this point, as we're going down, they're starting to hell, right? And we're like, all right, like any other storm in the Sierras, it's gonna go by in like 15 minutes. It stayed on for what, two
That was a
hours?
while.
I think it was like 2 hours of
Yeah,
hell.
I'd say,
Yeah, and we were on the backside of the mountain. There was no trail, right? So we're all off road. We're literally going through like
just
rocks, like
boulder hopping,
yeah, boulder hopping the entire day, probably for like 5 or 6 miles of boulder hopping.
which is hard because it weighs on your mind because
Hmm.
you don't want to twist your ankle because then you're really screwed. So
Yeah,
you're focusing the whole time.
yeah. Well, that's
Yeah,
what
that was
happened. We were up trying to cross this ridge, and we didn't know where to cross it because we didn't like it was super steep. So we're trying to figure out way, a way to go across this ridge, and I slipped
Yeah.
in the wet rock, and I thought I broke my wrist. I remember I was like, I don't know if I can feel it,
Yeah.
Andrew. Am I okay? I was freaking out.
Oh my God.
But that to me
It
was
was fun,
probably
man.
that was the most adventure I've ever had in my life was that day. Was that day, man. It was nuts. It was nuts.
It was super fun. Like
Yeah.
there's something. I mean, obviously there. So my I grew up hiking. My dad's taken me many times. He's told me so many stories
Hmm.
of people that he knew that have been hit by lightning.
That's crazy.
So it's something that I don't take lightly. But we were up there,
We were
and
up there.
there
That could have
was
happened, man. That could have happened. There was no
there's
shelter.
no filter. There's nowhere to go. So
Mm-mm.
all the best you can do is just get down as quick as you can, which is
Yeah.
what we did. But yeah, man, that energy that in the air, from the
Insane.
thunder and the lightning, it's
Insane.
just like
Yeah.
this planet is so
It is
powerful,
so
man.
powerful. Yeah. And it was so cool because from that ridge or that whole canyon right there, there's probably nobody in that canyon. And
No,
it's the
no,
size of like Riverside, or I don't know. It's just
massive,
massive. It's
massive.
huge.
Yeah,
It's like a city, and there's
miles. It was like miles across,
hmm
and then probably 10 or 15 miles, 20 miles long.
yeah,
It was
and there's
huge. Yeah,
beautiful lakes in like down at the bottom. I mean, it's like the Sierras are insane. Like if you've never gone to the Sierras or just
yeah.
gone like
Sure.
backpacking in like some mountain range, it's so beautiful, and it's so like you said, it's like we got to do it every few months. We went backpacking 3 times last year. We did
Yeah,
Jelena, the Sierras, and Catalina. This year we just went once, but it's the beginning of the
it's
second
early.
quarter.
It's
It's
still
early.
early.
It's early. We'll definitely do at least two more this year, and maybe three more. Who knows?
For sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I think it's obviously if you guys are interested, there's so many good resources. There's tons. YouTube is an amazing resource. People will show you what kind of gear to get because you
Hmm.
got to get the right stuff.
I think that's the
The safety.
yeah. I think that's the thing, Andrew. I think the reason why we started doing this because I had recently purchased the gear to go backpacking,
Hmm.
and you're like, oh yeah, like I have that stuff, like let's go. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, and but I just bought it, but I don't think I actually went on a trip yet. Like I was planning
Yeah,
on it.
yeah, yeah. It's fun, man, and it's a little pricey for the lighter stuff for backpacking, but once you have it,
It's good
the
forever.
options are endless. And
Yeah.
I can't wait, man. I'm working on it this year, and well, you already know this, but I'll let your friends know too. I'm gonna start learning how to use ropes and lead climb so that we can start doing the
Yes.
real high peaks and get
Yes.
up there and get into some high granite.
Oh yes. If you guys hear that I'm going to the Sierras and I don't come back, you can blame Andrew. Probably
Yeah,
slip, fall down on a rock in a mountain, break my
and
head.
I with a smile on your face.
I will, for sure, for sure. All right, buddy. Thank you
Good.
so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. Love hanging out
Yeah,
with
thanks for
you.
having me,
Love
man.
backpacking. Love your story. Love everything. And just keep on kicking butt, man.
You as well, man. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
All right, buddy. We'll talk
All right, talk to you soon.
later, bro. See you. Man.